This lecture will talk about some of the concepts covered in chapters 11 and 12. Chapter 11 talks about home visits with parents and children. Not all early childhood programs require home visits, but those that do generally can articulate their reasons for doing so in the following ways. The purposes of home visits include showing the family that the teacher cares enough to reach out to that family. It's an opportunity for the teacher and the child to spend time together. It's a completely different kind of context where you have undivided attention to that child. And then finally, and very importantly, to gain firsthand knowledge of the child's environment. We've talked before in this class about how you really understand a child better when you've had the opportunity to really see their dominant context, their family, their culture, their just where they live, what their world is really like. Of course, undertaking home visits has several key challenges. First, you want to make sure that you explain the purpose of a home visit at the outset. And this is really important because you don't want families to feel that you're there to evaluate them. The prospect of a home visit can be a little bit unnerving both for teachers and for parents, and it's important to really just focus on what that purpose is. And then you want to arrange time with the parents. Scheduling is difficult. Everyone has busy lives. It's important to try to be flexible in terms of, really, meeting a family's needs, scheduling needs, because it is more uncomfortable for the family to have the teacher come over, and they'll feel like they want probably the house to look a certain way, or to be available, or to have, I suppose all of the stars align to have their child's teacher over. So it's really important to arrange that time with parents ahead of time and to be sure that parents are comfortable with it. The third thing is that you want to make sure that you behave like a guest when you are undertaking the home visit. And despite the fact that teachers are the ones taking the initiative to set up the visit, they're still guests in another person's home. So we have to take the other person's lead. And this is important so that the family will be very comfortable. And this is a new role for classroom teachers because we're accustomed to being in control. So when we think about behaving like a guest, we think about maybe not correcting the child so much as you would in your own classroom because that's your kind of domain. You're in the box area, so to speak. We've talked about what's inside the box and outside the box in this course before. When people offer you something, to the extent absolutely possible, you should accept, unless something is conflicting with your own dietary, rules or religious rules. You try to behave like a guest in such a manner as to receive the hospitality that the family is offering you, and be on time. Teachers need to be sensitive to the demands on a family's time and arrive and leave on time so that you don't put an undue burden of time on the family. And be sure to expect distractions. We have to remember when we do a home visit that we've left the institution where we control the environment. We're in a private home, controlled by the family, and we have to accept the distractions. It's, the parent's phone that rings, or friend that drops in unexpectedly, or the parent who decides whether the TV is going to be on or off, or the dog is going to be in or out. And we've just got to know to expect that. After the visit, you should make sure that you send a thank you note and that you follow up using the information that's received, and that you create evaluation and recording notes. So make sure that you stay in touch with the family about the information that's learned and the issues discussed during a home visit, and kind of evaluate the home visit. Did it strengthen the parent-teacher-child relationship? How well were the goals met for this child, for this family? Make sure that you put something about the home visit in the child's file. It documents that the home visit occurred, and it records the information that's useful in future assessment and planning for the child. Other advantages of home visits. There's an increase in trust. Parents and children usually feel so much more secure and comfortable in their family home environment, and during a home visit, a child who sees his teacher welcomed as a guest into his home is going to feel very positively about his parents' acceptance of the teacher, and they'll feel tremendous pride. Can I show you? This is my kitchen. This is my room. These are my toys. Oftentimes children want to show you everything that they own during a home visit. It creates a tremendous feeling of pride for kids. And then also you gain first-hand insights too, the rewarding experience of feeling accepted by a family, and these first-hand insights where you can really see how parents and children interact in their home environment. It can really help you to understand a child. This chapter in your book talked about one teacher who felt concerned about a child's shyness until she went to the home and saw that he was being socialized to be respectful and hold back until he was spoken to, and that she could understand his personality in the context of his cultural family background once she went to the home visit. So we have great first-hand insights for children. And then it also helps us to increase learning for children too when we have these first-hand insights, because if we know how to frame experiences that are familiar and parents understand how they can support their children's learning, then that really helps. Now, disadvantages of home visits. Home visits are very time-consuming. There is no doubt about it. It's difficult to schedule a visit during a teacher's normal working hours. They often end up being at night. It becomes very tricky in terms of the logistics. So the additional time involved is substantial, but it is worth overcoming. Expense is also a consideration too. It would seem fair for teachers to be paid mileage, or have some kind of comp hours, or something for that time commitment, although not every program will necessarily offer that. Another disadvantage of home visits is that sometimes children misbehave. Everybody knows that children behave differently at home than they do at school. There's some carryover, but of course we all feel different levels of freedom in terms of our public behavior and our private behavior. And young children will become overly excited and sometimes behave a little wildly, and then you as the teacher are there and you're accustomed to being in charge of the child, but this is an uncomfortable position for parents and teachers, because parents are like, well, is she going to say something? Am I supposed to say something? Are they going to think I'm a bad parent if I don't correct my child? Or maybe for that family, maybe they think that letting down your hair at home is perfectly fine, and so it does get a little bit tricky. Neither parents nor teachers want to reveal themselves in a negative light, and the fact of the matter is that children a lot of times are so excited to have you there. It's such a change that they're not really sure what to do, and teachers might need to be flexible enough to cut this visit short if it's too stressful for the child or for the parents or for the teacher. And then another disadvantage is that there could possibly be negative feelings. Some families feel suspicious and threatened by an official visit, and it can take sensitive, open efforts by the schools and by the teachers to try to remove these fears. But ultimately, some families might still be a little bit uncomfortable and might just be putting up with the home visit because they want to, let's say, participate in the program. Head Start, for example, does require a home visit, and in order to participate, you do need to comply with the requirement, and so you may have some families that are really just tolerating the home visit. And then also we need to think about our own attitudes and prejudices in terms of making home visits. As we've talked about before, home visits are often attached to programs that are associated with poverty, and if you find yourselves in neighborhoods and lifestyles perhaps removed from what you are accustomed to or grew up with, you have to become aware of your biases. And sometimes those manifest themselves in our behavior. And we have to really, really think about that. We have to think about what it is that we're expecting and what's fair in terms of biases, particularly in light of the fact that our resources are not distributed equally amongst all people of the world, or all people of the United States, or all people in this area. When you look overall at home-based education programs, we see that there are home visitation programs that are kind of wrapped into other programs developed over like the last 30 years or more, and they focus oftentimes on teachers educating parents and children in the home. The goal of most home-based programs has been to help families become better teachers of their children, improve the quality of life for individual families. Often, as we've talked about before, home-based programs tend to serve families who are isolated in some way or who have risk factors often related to income. We do know that in terms of just traditional intervention, that what we had said, well, the goal or mission behind these programs is that, if we intervene with the children at school without really involving the family, then there's a lower success rate, whereas if we are able to engage the family, then that seems to work really well. The home visit component was added to Head Start in the early 70s, and then we started to see in the 60s and 70s that we were starting to talk more about intervention programs. Early Head Start we saw coming along in the mid-90s, so we just started reaching families with younger and younger children to say that we thought that that would particularly help. And then some of the most significant models of home visiting in recent family support efforts include the kinds of programs that you looked at in your discussion board assignment, where you visited all different websites to look at them, like Parents as Teachers or Hippie, Healthy Families. These are all programs that have home visiting components and their parent education. So the mission is to provide a level of training for parents, and then also get to know families and get families connected with other services that may even be helpful to them, like early preschool or community access to resources. Some of these programs, for example, Healthy Families, also connects you to where you can get vaccinations. So we have kind of multi-service tiers, of which home visiting is one part. And when we look at evaluation and potential for home visiting programs, we have found that whatever keeps the family engaged in these multiple services tends to work really well for families and also for children, and then ultimately for teachers. So finally, we know that home visits offer to families evidence that the teachers are interested, they want to care for their children, it's an opportunity to play a more comfortable and dominant role in the home setting. So families really receive that caring when we say that we're interested enough to do a home visit. And then for teachers, home visits are an opportunity to reach out to families and have opportunities to experience children's home environments and their relationships firsthand. And then to children, we have a chance to build deeper personal relationships with teachers in a comfortable home setting. Chapter 12 covers families in the classroom. When it comes to family involvement in the classroom, we know that there are certainly advantages and there are potential problems. The benefit for parents, of course, is that they gain firsthand experience of a program and of their child's reactions in a classroom, feelings of satisfaction because they've made a contribution. I mean, everybody loves it when they walk into the classroom and their child brightens up like the sun and says, "Hi, Mommy!" It's very exciting for parents, and they love that. So there's definitely a benefit for sure for parents. They feel like they know what's going on. They feel like they're involved. They see that their child is excited, and that feels great for parents. There are benefits for teachers. Teachers gain resources to extend learning opportunities. They observe parent-child interaction. And oftentimes they can feel supported because parents are participating and empathizing with them. And when parents feel good about coming into your classroom, then they're more willing to help you, cut out little clouds for some project or help you wash out paintbrushes. When they feel involved, when they feel like they're building a relationship with you, it makes such an enormous difference. So the benefit for teachers in terms of building that parent relationship is substantial, and you will build that parent relationship when that parent comes and sees you teaching and says, oh, what a great job. Oh, she's so nice. Oh, that's very impressive. That works really, really well. And as we've talked about before, understanding the parent-child relationship is so revealing for you as a teacher to be able to, help the child. And then the benefit for children is children, of course, feel very special when their parents are involved. They feel secure with this tangible evidence of parents and teachers cooperating with one another. They realize the value their parents place on education, and they gain directly because parents understanding and their skills increase. When parents understand exactly what you're working on in class and they're able to reinforce it at home, well, that's a huge advantage for children. Now, the disadvantages are that sometimes children's routines are interrupted. There will be some kids that will burst into a puddle of tears upon seeing their parent because they just will say they just want to go home. And they're having such a hard time and they have difficulty pulling it together. There are some kids who do experience this during the parents' visit to the classroom, and that's really difficult to deal with. It's hard for the parent. It's hard for the teacher because sometimes as a teacher you feel like, well, I don't want to come down too hard on this child, or I don't want to say, okay, get in your seat, get back to work, even though I think that will help the child to stop crying because maybe the parent will think I'm cold and the parent is like, hugging the child. Once I had a parent who every time she came to the class, her first grade daughter would engage in the most baby-like behavior. She would climb into her mother's lap and stroke her mother's hair and cheeks. She would be like turned, we would have story time, and her mom was there to help with centers, and she would always show up a little early and be there for story time. And during story time, this little girl would climb into her mom's lap, facing not me, not the story, but facing her mom, like it was a hug, but sitting on mom's lap, and just like kiss her and hug her and stroke her hair. And it was it's really not entirely the customary first grade behavior, and I would always think like, well, what should I do? And I guess I just ignored it because I thought, well, what can I do? I mean, if I say something to the child, the mom is going to think that I'm mean. And then the entire time that the mom was there, the child was, would always kind of do, behave in that way, like that. Perhaps that was her role at home. And in any case, I did see that her routine was definitely interrupted, and I just had to come to a place where I thought, well, but her mom's engagement in the program and her seeing that her mom is here is probably better, because if I lose this mom, or she feels alienated, or the child feels that I've alienated the mom, then I'm really going to have a bigger problem, and what can you do? But we do see sometimes that children's routines can be interrupted, and I think this is especially salient when we see the crying. Sometimes we have parents that don't want to leave in the morning when the child is crying, and it seems like the longer the parent stays around, it makes it worse. And so, in that case where you've got behavior that's very disruptive because the child is continuing to cry, then of course you'd want to take a different kind of action than just turning a blind eye. So it's a very difficult issue in terms of the child routine thing. And then the last issue, I always felt this way. Teachers feel uncomfortable being observed, and I just had to tell myself, oh well, there's nothing I can do. I have to choose to be the kind of teacher that gets comfortable being observed. And maybe I wasn't comfortable on the inside. I still to this day, if I have parents kind of pop by when I'm teaching, I'm wondering, oh, I wonder what they think. It might, do they think I'm too mean? Do they think I'm too lenient? What do they think of my teaching? Do they think that what we're doing is interesting or not? Or do they think I'm paying enough attention to their child or the other children? So I really understand the idea of feeling uncomfortable while being observed, and I think it is very important to at least develop an outward persona of being comfortable, because if parents sense that you are uncomfortable, number one, it will make them uncomfortable, and then you get into like this negative back and forth where they're uncomfortable because you're uncomfortable, and you're uncomfortable because they're uncomfortable, and then you're wondering what you did wrong that they're uncomfortable, and then they're wondering if you don't like them because you're uncomfortable. So that's the first problem. And then the second problem is that the parent could even think that perhaps you don't know what you're doing if you're that uncomfortable. So we have to learn to adapt to that. And I would say this even extends to tours. When people are touring your building because they're thinking about enrolling their child in your program, we've got to be flexible. We've got to look at every family and every parent as a potential family that we're going to work with. And if we are the least little bit unfriendly or put out or inconvenienced, people will pick up on that, and they will think not, oh, I shouldn't have come right when they were going out for recess. They'll think, oh, well, this is a very unfriendly place. I mean, here I was ready to, sign over my check, and they're just unfriendly. So I think that's a really good challenge for us in terms of thinking about getting comfortable being observed. When we look at parent involvement, here are some strategies that you can use to think about getting folks involved in your classrooms for all the advantages we've already talked about. Explore resources and classroom needs. This is a great thing to do right when people are enrolling. You can ask parents right away, like in a parent questionnaire, the names and the ages of family members who might have time to come in and volunteer, what their occupations are, interests and hobbies. One year I had a family that was involved in dentistry. One parent was a dentist and the other parent was, I think, a periodontist. And once I knew that, I thought, oh, fantastic, because February is Dental Health Month, and it was a great opportunity for me to draw on someone's occupation that I wouldn't necessarily have thought of. Another year I had someone who's a professional artist, and we were able to integrate her interests into the class in a way that I, wouldn't normally have done. But then when we, she and I talked, and we decided that when we were working on patterns and when we were working on shape identification, that those were several key times that she could come in and do a neat project with the children that related to the curriculum. We kind of did it together, and what a great thing that was. It was a great resource for me. I learned a lot. I continued to do those same lessons even after she had moved on to other grade levels, and it was fantastic for the child. I mean, the child just thought that was the greatest thing in the world. I had one year somebody who was really involved with theater and drama and puppetry. That worked out great too. And if I had not asked those questions, some of those moms would have been too shy. They didn't want to step on my toes, or they didn't, it's funny, even people who are very good at what they do, like drama or art or even dentistry, just kind of make the assumption that if you need something from them, perhaps you'll ask. And so it's great to find out that information from folks and see how you can incorporate their skills, their interests, their hobbies. That can work out really, really well. And then, of course, encouraging informal visits. Sometimes a casual, unstructured visit can be best because the parent feels no pressure to perform a role. Of course, it depends on their time. Now, you don't want to have constant informal visits, perhaps. I guess it depends on the age of your children and the structure of your program. But it's neat to have that kind of a policy where it's kind of open door. If you want to stop by for a period of 5 or 10 minutes just to see what the class is doing, as long as it doesn't become disruptive for your child or for the class, then I have no problem with that. So you can encourage those sorts of informal visits. You could reserve time, might be a good strategy for that if you want to say, well, anybody's welcome to come by on Friday morning when we have centers. That could work really well. Birthday celebrations. can be a nice way of having informal visits. I will caution you, you need to be very clear with parents at back to school night on your expectations for birthday celebrations and informal visits. If your program has, let's say, 10 minutes carved out for that, and it's just a very quick special snack, maybe even just a very quick non-edible birthday treat like pencils or stickers, or then you need to be clear about that, because sometimes we had families that sent in granola bars or fruit snacks, or or cupcakes or cookies, and sometimes we had families that would show up with a cake and candles and juice boxes and party hats. So you want to make sure that you're clear about what you expect in terms of informal visits as it relates to birthday celebrations. You can also have like kind of family of the week types of components in the classroom plans, or you could have lunch invitations. That works really well because it's unstructured time and it's more informal. And then in terms of thinking about special occasion types of events, just be careful that you look at family structure. Sometimes muffins with mom and donuts for dads kinds of activities can really make some children feel left out if they don't have a dad. But if you have a special person tea, then that includes anybody and everybody, and the child whose nanny is coming can feel very comfortable because because let's say both parents are, their one parent that they live with or whatever is working, or, it really works better that way. So we have to think about that. These are some examples, again, of ways that we can encourage informal visits that are talked about in your book. I've already talked about birthdays and lunch invitations. Your book talks about other special events that are common in schools, such as drop-in and read, which is something that is to facilitate family literacy, which we know is connected in the research to children's overall literacy. Or zoo day is, having the pets in the classroom. People love that. Personal invitations, like, hey, could you come in during your child's star of the week? That works really well. Parent observation, sometimes parents want to come in and observe exactly what's happening in a classroom. Walking report cards, these are what we call like CR success nights or panorama of learning nights, where you have children's work displayed for parents to see. Those types of visits also work very well. Again, in terms of thinking about using parents as classroom resources, if we want to get information about the things that these folks are working on, then that can really add a lot to your classroom. We talked about information about jobs and hobbies already, but I would add to the list culture and religion. One year I had a mom who volunteered to make for us like a cake made out of rice flour and homemade noodles and all sorts of great stuff for Chinese New Year. And it was by far the best Chinese New Year that we ever had. It was really neat. Sometimes extended family will make contributions. I've had great things happen in terms of extended family come in. I once had a child that both of his great aunts would come in, and the grandmother. So grandma and her two siblings would come in for this little boy for centers all the time. And they were some of my very favorite helpers. They did such a beautiful job. They were so great with the kids, and he felt so special to always kind of have a grandma or one of her sisters there. And that was pretty neat. And sometimes parents will surprise you in terms of their time. Sometimes a parent can't come into the classroom, but maybe they're happy to cut things out at home. Maybe they're just willing to come in and read with the kids. It just depends. Sometimes families who don't even have time, let's say, to cut stuff out would be glad to send in a bag of cotton balls if you need that for an art project. Even really small things can make a family feel that they've contributed something, particularly if you're asking for something that's not very expensive. A bag of cotton, for example, doesn't cost a ton. We do also have to be sensitive in terms of thinking about what we're asking of families when we do ask materials, particularly when we work in low-income environments. And some families, of course, have special skills, as we've talked about, and Some families will love to engage in tutoring or go with you on a field trip once in terms of classroom resources. But in any case, we know that having family involvement in the classroom is very important. That parents feel like they're making a valuable contribution to a classroom, that teachers will feel ultimately supported when we've got the help from parents, and children feel recognized, valued, and supported when they see their families welcomed into the classroom. So teachers need to have a role of having a welcoming attitude, helping parents become comfortable, giving parents specific roles when they come in, because a lot of parents have no idea what to do, and then of course using those resources that we have at our disposal. And if we do all of these things, then that will help to make us successful in terms of keeping family involvement alive in our classroom and making that real for the children.